The air wasn't just thick in Donora, Pennsylvania on that October morning in 1948, but it was suffocating. By 7 a.m. on October 27th, a heavy gray shroud had settled over the town like a funeral veil, and no one knew it was just the beginning of a nightmare that would claim lives, paralyze a community, and change the course of environmental history forever. The sky, once clear and crisp, had turned a sickly amber, and the usual sounds of morning, the clink of dirty dishes, birdsong, they were all gone. In their place was an eerie silence, broken only by coughs, gasps, and the strained voices of people stumbling outside, clutching their chests. What unfolded over the next 4 days, it wasn't natural. It wasn't a storm or a plague. It was the result of industry, complacency, and a perfect storm of weather that turned the town into a toxic cauldron. By the time the fog lifted on November 1st, 20 people would be dead, and over 6,000, which is nearly the entire town, would have fallen ill. But in the early morning of October 27 of that doomed week, no one had a clue yet what was going on. The mills, they were still rolling and working. The smokestacks were still belching. Donora, nestled along a river, was thriving, or so it seemed. It was a steel town, a coal town, a place on the backs of industry. The American dream, they said, forged in fire and steel. But the fire here was not just burning in the furnaces, it was seeping into the lungs of the people. The smog didn't arrive just overnight. It was a product of 2 days of relentless emissions, trapped by an unbroken inversion layer, a blanket of warm air above cooler air below, sealing pollutants down towards the ground. For 36 hours, the smoke from Donora Zinc Works and the American Steel and Wire Company poured into the valley, mixing with sulfur, dioxide, smoke, dust, and other toxic byproducts. The air became a lethal cocktail, invisible to the eye, but it was deadly to breathe. Workers at the plant, they kept going. They were oblivious. Kids went to school. Grandparents walked to church. No one saw the invisible danger piling up in the sky. By the afternoon of the 27th, the air was so thick that people could barely see the end of the street. Cars slowed to a crawl. Windows stayed shut. The fog wasn't just a weather phenomena. It was poison. By 8 p.m. on October 27th, the situation started to spiral. Hospitals began to overflow. Emergency calls flooded in. Parents rushed children to the doctor, many with blue lips, wheezing, and gasping for air. The town's only ambulance was overwhelmed. Nurses worked without sleep. Dr. Frank Saylor, the local physician, stood in front of the hospital and yelled into the smog, "This is not a routine epidemic. This is a disaster." But the town wouldn't fully wake up until the dead were being counted. Over the next couple of days, the smog reached its peak. At night, the streets remained eerily lit by gas lamps, the fog casting long shadows as if the town were trapped in a nightmare. People huddled indoors, burning candles for light, but their homes, it didn't protect them. The pollutants seeped through the walls, into bed sheets, into their breath. By October 29th, the death toll had climbed. A 78-year-old woman named Lizzie Sonaski died in her kitchen, her body found slumped over the stove, a half-eaten piece of bread still in her hand. No one knew at the time she was the first to fall, nor that others would follow. The toll kept rising, not just from heart attacks and respiratory failure, but from the sheer physical weight of suffocating air. The elderly, the very young, those with weak lungs, these were the first people to go. Even animals began to perish. Horses dropped dead in their stalls. Dogs lay gasping on porches. On October 30th, the wind finally shifted. A slight breeze broke the inversion. The smog began to lift. Slowly, tentatively, the sun peered through. It was pale and weak at first, but it was real. People stepped outside, blinking in the light like sleepwalkers waking from a shared nightmare. The town was still silent, but now it was broken, not from the fog, but from grief. They began to count. The newspaper called it the fog of death, but more than that, it was the fog of denial. Denial from officials, from industry leaders, from a nation convinced that progress meant breathing smoke. The truth emerged slowly, but the impact was instantaneous. Investigations revealed the clear link between the smog and the emissions from the factories. Yet the companies, they fought back. They denied responsibility. The community was left to pick up the pieces. The event, it shocked the nation. It wasn't just about Donora. It was a warning. For the first time, Americans saw their real progress might have bigger costs, heavier than steel or coal. Today, Donora is a quiet town. It's mostly forgotten. But the memory of that fog lingers, not just in the history books, but in the air we breathe. It helped trigger the first modern environmental laws, the Clean Air Act of 1963, and the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. The smog of Donora didn't just kill, it taught the world how fragile life can be when we forget to look up, to listen, to feel the air. And every time we hear about pollution, about climate change, about invisible dangers hidden in our skies, we remember that small steel town in Pennsylvania in the fall of 1948. The air itself turned to poison, and the world finally began to listen. Thanks all for tuning in today. If you like this story, please like this video and consider subscribing to the Daily Pastcast YouTube channel if you haven't. You can find us daily with new stories on YouTube and on TikTok. We'll see you again tomorrow on October 28th.